We're saving money. It's post-Christmas, mate. No one's got any cash in the bank. Cash cows for NRL Fantasy. This is a video everyone's been asking for. And look, it's not the best. It's the 6th of February today, right? So we don't really know exactly who's going to start where. This list has some really good options, but it's also got some really dodgy guys on it. I'm going to start off here, Biz, with KLRO first. And there is no guarantee that he starts round one. But for some reason, everyone has him in their center spot. Everyone seems to think Talakai is going to get dropped. I don't necessarily think that's going to happen. Do you see that happening for Aro?
No, I think as talented as Aro is, and as much as we both love him to be signed up by Para, Ramian and Talakai, like they're one of like the better center pairings in the comp. They're not going anywhere anytime soon. He's a guy that I can see getting some time over the year just due to injuries or whatnot, but I'm not starting with him. Like, if he gets a bench spot in round one, he'll probably play like 10 minutes as a utility and not go anywhere in price. So not worth my time. But I think in general, I looked through our cows list and you can probably say that about 80% of them. Like, I think there's always a cows that you have a list you have in the preseason, you have prior to trials, and then you have a much better sense of who the real cows are post-trials. So we should record another version of this Longy after the trials, and I'm sure we'll have a lot better cows.
Oh, we'll do a bunch during trials analysis how they're performing. Because a guy like Finu, right? The Tigers bring him in. He is the long-term future at that club in the halves. If he crushes it in the trials, there's no reason for them not to start him. It's just his confidence they're preserving there. So he's a guy who could crack a starting spot. Probably won't. To be honest, he probably won't. But there's a chance that he sneaks in. Chevy Stewart's another one, and just interrupt me if you need to, but some of these ones are a bit boring and we get to the really interesting ones. Chevy has a chance of starting at fullback for Canberra. I think he's too young. That's just my feel on it. I think it might be another year or two. Obviously, big competition with Seb Chris there last year and Xavier Savage being a freak. But in reserve grade, Chevy Stewart was playing fullback and Xavier Savage was playing on the wing last year. So they seem to rate him over Xavier Savage. There's a chance he starts round one. 230K. It's not bad, but it is risky because Seb Chris is suspended for that first game. So you can easily slide back in.
I think both the issues with Chevy here, you got Seb Chris who's suspended, you got Savage in the wings, and with Finu, you've got the issue with Tigers on a bye. So you actually don't know if he's going to start. You're going to have to kind of base it off trials. And same with Chevy. You're going to see in trials like who's winning what position to really have a go at them. But like I said, maybe we come back in 4 weeks and all three are hits and they're at the top of our buy list at 230K, or in 4 weeks' time, we're not even talking about them again. They're just way down the pecking order. But I'd love to see one of these 230K guys in my backs because I need some cash cows.
Mate, desperately. I mean, Chevy Stewart, I've got him in there right now. Ben Takura is another one who I think it's going to be a long burn here. He's a guy to keep an eye on. If he was fantastic in the trials and he carved out a 30-minute role, then you might have that conversation with Flegler going as well. There's a bit of space there. But again, I just can't see him coming out and playing the minutes to start with. So, I mean, do you see it any differently for him?
No, I think you nailed the nails on the head. I think him and another player on this list we're shortly about to get to might benefit from Flegler's move to the Dolphins, but I don't think they're going to be cash cows in the sense that they're going to come out scoring 40, 50. They're going to be slow burners or scoring 20 to 30, kind of like a Wiramu Greg from last year. They'll just get some minutes, get the high PPM in short stints, and then if there's a pathway that opens up for them with injuries, they can be real good cash cows in the middle part of the year.
The other side of it, though, is when you look at a guy like Ben Takura, or let's compare it to him, Xavier Wilson as well, if they've got the talent to force the minutes, then they will, right? So a Xavier Wilson type of player, right? The Broncos aren't super deep in the forward pack. They lost a few guys on the edge and in the middle. He looked really good to me last year. And I think he was a 1.5 ppm or something like that last year too. So he's got a ton of pedigree in terms of that side of things. If he ever carves out the minutes, which I think he has the potential to do this year and much more quickly than Takura, then yeah, I'm pretty excited about him. He's actually sitting on my bench right now. And I just think he has the upside to explode for those odd games as well and really accelerate the cash making too.
Yeah, he's on my bench as well, Longy, for the reasons you mentioned. Like when I watched him last year, he looked really talented to me, and it sounds like there's a lot of raps in Brisbane regarding this bloke. And he seems like a guy who could have one big run, like a 20-point run, and it just gets his cash price moving. And dual position is always nice too.
It's preseason form though, right? If he can do that preseason well, then he's going to get the shot in our fantasy teams, which I know he's staying up at night stressing about. Ben Trbojevic next. Now, there's talk that he takes Josh Schuster's spot at Manly. Josh Schuster's had a few injuries in the preseason, whatever else there is going on there. Ben Trbojevic, 250K. There's a reason he's 250K after getting the starting shot year after year. It's because he just hasn't been able to maintain any sort of form or any sort of starting position in that Manly side. Is it any different this year, Biz? Is the center positioning worth taking the gamble on?
I think if he's starting round one, you have to have him because it just takes one 40-point score to get the price rolling. You could get a 40 in round one, and even if he goes back to the bench with a couple of 15s, he's probably making you 70, 80K. My only thing with, they've paid Schuster. He is in their plans. And, yeah, he's having an odd preseason where he's been injured a lot and he's just had an inconsistent run of form, but he's their guy, and even if Ben Trbojevic gets a starting role week one, which I'm not so sure on, I think Schuster works back into the team eventually. Look, if he starts, I'll have him just because the risk is too high not to, but I'd be surprised if he starts, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think Schuster's a must-have. He's actually 20 points of value himself as well, so he's the more interesting guy there. Now, we've got a Canberra trio here. We've got Strange, we've got Weeks, we've got Kotrick. I'll throw Strange to you first. Have you seen much of this guy, Biz?
I've seen a lot of highlights on him. To be fair, I'm not really watching that much reserve grade out in New York this year, but from what I've seen over the last couple of years, he seems like a very talented player. Even at rep level, he's had really strong performances. I think he averages in the mid-30s, low to mid-30s in the reserves. I think they've got wraps on him. I can see them expediting him into first grade. And I think he's one of these guys that if he starts, you have to have him. But there's still question marks. I think preseason will really dictate how he goes. But if he's there round one, he's in my team round one. I think you could say that for all three of these guys, for Weeks and Kotrick. I think Kotrick out of the three, if we discuss the other two, is the most surefire bet. He's not in a cash cow way. He's not going to average 40, but he's a guy at 260K who should have a spot for most of the season at dual position. So he's just a depth player. He doesn't really have to be a cow. If I can just sit him on my bench and plug him in once or twice in the first 5-10 weeks when I need someone, it's good enough for me. And Weeks is the wild card. People are hyping him up to play 6 for Wyden. Longy, I know you got some thoughts on this, but my personal thoughts are, I'm not sure about that. I haven't seen that much from Weeks, but I'm not sure who else they could have playing there either. So,
Yeah, I mean, let's go to pure fantasy here. I've never been less inspired by a player on the field. Actually, there's one guy. The next guy that we're going to talk about after this is the guy I've been least inspired by for fantasy. But both of them were in my team last year. KO Weeks. He just didn't seem to want the ball last year when he had it. And he was so good to start off the year.
You were big on him. You were big on him for a part.
He was amazing. When he was coming off the bench, he was doing everything. He was throwing himself at absolutely everything.
I remember
that guy.
He tore up Parramatta in the space of 5-10 minutes when he got off the bench.
Fantastic. He was crazy. And you know what happened? They chucked him in at half playing against Penrith, and he got destroyed a bit in a team that was going to get destroyed by Penrith. And they absolutely scapegoated him in that game, and then he just didn't have any confidence after that. It looked like to me. So, I mean, 252K, you can't not buy him with the half-wing fullback eligibility, but I would be ready for the fact that he might just keep that little 18.3 average, and he might be a guy that you're hanging on to all year. Very similar to if you make the mistake of starting with Tommy Talau. Now, Tommy Talau, they could clone Tommy Talau and play him in every backline position and accumulate them into one score, and I still would not buy Tommy Talau squared. There is just nothing in this guy for fantasy. 19.3, that factors in a few games where he really popped off. I just look at him and I just think the odds of him scoring 0 about the same as the odds of him scoring 30 plus.
Just tell us how you really feel, Long. You feel very strongly about this, but
I just thought he was going to do better last year, man.
he's pretty much on the cash cow list every year, and every year he barely gets above base price. Now, you could say new team, new role, but he's going from one bad team to well, Manly aren't bad. Like you've got Cherry Evans and Trbojevic throwing him the ball. Yeah, look,
he's not going to start. Ruben Garrett and Politao Collar are going to start.
Yeah, and they've got Brad Parker back there too, who's there. I know they're generally pretty high on him just because of his defense, but yeah, he's not going to start. If he does get even hypothetically, if he does get a start, we have to justify why we put him in this list, and we're wasting people's time talking about him.
Right? So because 5% of coaches have him.
Okay, well,
he's getting way too many teams that have been sent to me.
I can't wait till he tears apart the Rabbits week 1, and you're selling Payne Haas to afford Tommy Talau, mate.
I think that this photo, they photoshopped the jersey onto him. It looks different to all the other photos as well.
Do you remember the Jack Hetherington photo from last year? we have to pull that up.
Heather, we'll get him at the end. All right, here's one that is. It's not a great list. It's not a great list.
We should just end this video. It's just getting worse. Worse.
It gets good in the 300s. But Daddy Levi. Right, here's the chat. There's talk that he will be the starting hooker at Canberra. That can mean 30 minutes, and then Tom Starling comes on and plays 50 minutes. So it might not be anything. But if you're looking at a starting hooker, 286K, I'm pretty sure, like, if you played fantasy for a while, you've made 200K off Danny Levi like 7 times now. This could be the 8th time. He doesn't need to stay all year for it to work. Like, I just look at it and go, yeah, I could do it if he plays all right in the trials, and if he starts round 1, I could see myself dating this ex again.
Yeah, look, 200K I think is a bit bullish, but I can see myself making 100K. I think you're right. I think he plays 30, 40 minutes for like 20, 25 points. I mean, I don't even know if he's going to make you 100K without a try, to be honest, because he's not going to play more than 50 minutes, and his points per minute are just not that great. Like if I just quickly whip out the Levi PPM, I'm going to hit you with it. It's 0.58. So if I multiply that by 40 minutes, that is 23 points, and he's not making you any money. So at his PPM, he actually needs about 50, 55 minutes to make you money. So maybe he's not even making you 100K. But there's not much downside to it.
Pack though, right? Canberra, great pack. Look, I'm struggling as well. All right,
he started in 2 games. He started round 1 and 2 last year before getting injured in round 3. He scored 29 and 40. So maybe I'm underestimating him. Maybe he has the potential to get a 40-point game and start the price. So yeah.
There we go. You get 2 pretty mediocre weeks out of him. Watch out for that. Jack Bostock, 307K. Bostock wasn't super inspiring for fantasy last year either, but there are raps on him. He seems like a good player in real life. He's got some upside. I mean, do you think if he got to start round 1, 307K is a bit of an awkward price. Are you on him?
No, I mean, I had him last year for 1 week as a cash out, thinking that he'd get that position and run away with it. It didn't happen. And I just look at his scores, even in reserves, in the scores he's had, unless he's scoring tries, which he could, like the Dolphins could improve, and he's got that aerial prowess, and I've heard he's a good finisher, and I've seen some good finishing from him in the reserves. Look, at 307K for a winger, it's just harder because you're already eroding 57K you would from like a base price player, and wingers aren't known for, most wingers aren't known for averaging that well. So I think I'll skip unless there's absolutely no other options at the wing fullback position.
Yeah. Look, Edric Lee is lurking at the club as well, so you can watch out for that too. Liam Henry. Now, I know you've done a bit of digging on this guy. Look, Jermaine Hopgood was sitting exactly this spot a few years ago. Liam Henry, he could be that next guy that makes the leap. Do you think he comes in? Does he have the pedigree to do it?
Yeah, I mean, look, Liam Henry in the reserve grade averages like something ridiculous, like 60 points or something. His work rate is insane. The only thing is the minutes question. And, Spencer Leniu has now left the club. So there is prop minutes available. They've won 3 on the trot. So maybe they're more willing to rest some guys or play them. When I say rest, like, reduce their minutes by 5 or 10, especially if they think Liam Henry is the future, and play him. The guy like Liam Henry, he only needs about 30, 35, 40 minutes to make you a lot of money. Because even though his average there is 27, if he breaks out and he's getting 40, 50 minutes, he could average 40, 50 points. And over the origin period, I expect him to be a real solid big two. Plus, more and more recently, I've seen James Fisher-Harris deal with suspensions and injuries. And so there is space in this pack. I'll probably have him. A 320K is also a bit niggly. Like, it would have been a bit easier below 300. But I just think in a good team with the pedigree of scoring he has, like, I'll hit him up, yeah.
1.7% too. He's a big pod. That'll change if his form's good in the trials. But I agree with you completely. If you've got a middle who you can rely on as a bench player and they're going to get that 40 points, that's invaluable because, otherwise you've got Talau there and you're in a tough spot. Blake Taff is another one. He's a bit of a Talau of the fullbacks. Look, for Blake Taff, he was at Southspan. He didn't have any pedigree at all for fantasy.
Skip.
None of this is a diss on them as real players, by the way. I think Taff's actually pretty crafty. But for fantasy, yeah, he's just not it. I don't think he should be there starting fullback as well. I think they've paid Crichton all this money. Give him the spot. Let's move on. Jesse Arthurs. So, man, everyone is excited about Jesse Arthurs because he's a name they remember who's at centre. And there's no cash cows at the spot right now. So, Jesse Arthurs, do you like? Give me a rating from 1 to 10 on this pick. How old are you on him?
Probably 6, to be honest. Like, I think, he's a name everyone knows now, but he's never really been a fantasy start. I think moving from wing to center always has incremental points. Like, I remember one of the first seasons I started playing NRL Fantasy about 10 years ago now was I had picked up Sean Kenny-Dowell when he moved from wing to center, and he exploded. Like, he went much better at center. So if Arthurs is in that center spot, then, I can see him creep up to the 30, 35 average mark. Especially in a really good Broncos team. My only issue is that 350K is niggly. They've got the Roosters to start away. I'll probably skip him. Like, I think I'd rather use 100. I'd rather go on Ethan Strange if he lands that spot and put that 100K to use elsewhere. But I do see the attraction.
He was so good in that grand final. That's the one thing I think everyone's remembering that game. If you carry that form into this year, that sort of half of footy, maybe it's an equation that makes sense. The other thing is, it is Brisbane. They're a very good attacking outfit. You get a few cheap tries just being on a team that's as good as that. So I think if he starts, he's value, and I think he could blip up to sort of 550K just on the back of some big attacking games where they beat up on someone average.
On the flip side, he played one game at centre last year against Melbourne in round 27, and he scored 11 points in 80 minutes. So he's going to have his down games as well.
So Talau 2.0 is what you're saying.
No, I wouldn't go that far.
It's probably about 10 points too high. Carl Flanagan next. Now, Flano, I love this pick, man. I know you love this pick too. Flano is so underrated as a real footballer, and he's so underrated for fantasy. He's just a guy who's had a bit of a hard time of it. But I'm going to give you the skid on Flano. 41 average when he plays in the halves and plays good minutes. That right there is enough. He is instantly a mid-ranger that you can sort of lock in there. He was a 51 average when he played next to Luke Keary. Now, the only reason I bring that up is there's a lot of talk that Ben Hunt will go into more of a running 6 role. He'll be more of a creative half in that team, and Flano will steer the ship. I doubt that goes in that direction as far as they're saying it's going to, just with how Ben Hunt is and how good he is at sort of owning that team. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of responsibility on offer for Flano. And the other thing is he's probably the goal kicker there as well. So for me, surefire pick there. The Dragons be a little bit dodgy, but I think he should average 40 to 45 points there.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a must-have, everything you mentioned. I think Lomax wasn't that sharp in the goals last couple of years. I think Kyle Flanagan's a great goal kicker. Dad's the coach. That always helps. Just look at remember Jake Arthur. No, okay, I don't want to bring that up. No, I think Kyle Flanagan is a 40-point player. He tackles quite a bit. Look, people hate on Kyle Flanagan, but I don't think he's that bad. Like, to be fair, which half has looked good at the Dogs the last few years. Like even Burton, people are saying drop him to centre, and look how talented he is. I think halves in bad situations always look bad, no matter what. It's really hard for them. So I think Kyle Flanagan's going to have a great year. I think he'll be a great foil next to Ben Hunt. I'm expecting, a solid average.
Do you think there's any chance that he moves to hooker at some point this year?
Kyle Flanagan or Ben Hunt?
Kyle Flanagan.
Or
Ben Hunt, I guess. I think I'm leaning Flano myself. He was so good last year.
Yeah, I can see it, to be honest. Like they've got Little there, who I'm personally pretty high on. He's a pretty good attacking player, but I can see him filling in minutes there. Will he be a starting hooker? Probably unlikely in my eyes, but I think in terms of starting with him in fantasy, I think it's irrelevant. I think he's pretty much locked in as a 6 there. I think you just have to pick him.
Done deal. Kyle Flanagan must have, get him in. Xavier Savage. Now, he's a 38 average when he starts at fullback, which is deceptively high when you think about his sort of fantasy seasons he's had. But he's a guy who he gets involved. He was probably a couple of years of maturity and physicality away from first grade when he was last playing consistently. So I look at him and I think if he gets that shot and he's been working at his craft, then he's going to be a guy where, Tyrell Sloan last year was 350K to start, and he bounced up into the 500s. Savage could easily do the same thing. If he's in the team round 1, and, you've obviously got Jaden Campbell, Ryan Pappenhausen, is he a third wing fullback?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's just a guy who has the ability to crack 40-50. He's an explosive player. He's going to have down weeks, but at 350K, you cop the down weeks. You talked about it a bit earlier with Chevy that Savage was playing wing for a lot of last year in the reserve. So I'm actually not sure what the plan is, but on paper, if he wins that fullback spot, which I think a lot of the analysis is saying that, he's a great pick, but I'm just not that sure he wins that spot. But I think if he gets it, he's in my team. And plus, I know fantasy is stats and not that serious, but I love having fun players in my team so I can have a reason to watch them on a weekend. And if I had Savage in my team, like, hell yeah, I'm watching him. Like, he could break away for a try, and it's exciting. So I'm bullish on Savage.
Dude, up until the last minute as well. It's like, remember when we had Milford in fantasy back when he was at Canberra? Exactly the same kind of player. Yeah, no, that'd be awesome. Munro, he's a similarly exciting player. Are you excited about him for fantasy, though?
Look, there's not much stats here to back up his success. He seems like a guy who will score a lot of tries, but he's more of a crafty, smaller player, skinnier, taller, good in the air than a tackle-busting kind of Mike Acevo type player who's going to steamroll you. So traditionally, I think for wingers, it's not always that helpful, like that kind of build. But on the south sides, the wingers score a lot of tries with Latrell roaming on both sides. So I can see this guy averaging more than a try a game. But, due to his average last year, he's at 350, and I'm not banking 350 at a winger. If he was starting at below 300, I'd do it. But if it was 250, absolutely, I'd start with him. But unless he's scoring 40s, his price is not really moving enough to bank. So I'll skip Munro, but I'm very bullish on the real-life talent.
Yeah, my concern there too is Isaac Thompson, Tane Milne. Go look at their price this year. They're coming in at prices that are around this or even lower. So there weren't a lot of tries to go around on that right wing. Alex Johnson obviously scores a bunch on the left. I'm with you there. I don't think there's enough juice in the squeeze for this. I don't think he's even really worth picking up in a draft league as well. I think let everyone else get on this guy. If he comes out and crushes it round 1, he's super involved, he runs 200 meters and breaks 10 tackles, then cop the 30K, 40K, whatever it is that you lose there and bring him in. But I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a consistent base for him. Probably more of a super coach pickup there. Jarrell Skelton, I'll talk on him quickly. You don't have to comment. I'll throw Olam to you next. But for Skelton, I just think Skelton's got every tool in the shed to be a fantasy gun. The only thing is he's not a starter at the Dogs, right? But I just think he's a guy where I'm just going to be watching every single week, waiting for that opportunity for him to come in, because I think at some point he's going to break out as a not an A tier guy, but as one of those really exciting winger talents. Whether it's at the Dogs or not, I'd love for Parramatta to sign him, for example, and to give him, a shot at least in the rotation with our outside backs. But I just think he's got every tool in the shed. He's super explosive. He's a big tackle buster. He runs a lot of meters. He's very strong, very fast. He's a hot prospect to keep an eye on through the year.
I had him last season as a cash cow, and so I watched him pretty closely when he did play, and he was good. Like he was sure, he was safe for a big guy. Like, with those big wingers, you're always concerned about their hands and the reliability. But he wasn't making mistakes. He was running the ball strongly. I'm surprised he didn't get more opportunity. So he's one I'm looking out for this year.
He's in no teams too, so keep an eye out. Justin Olam at the Tigers, $375K. It's a big name. Is it a big fantasy bounce back year?
No, I think the round one buy makes the decision easy. Like you're just not starting a 375K center who has a buy round one. Yeah, he's a big name, but he's played in probably the best team of the last 10 years other than Penrith. And now he's probably going to the worst team of the last 10 years. Now, I think in terms of when you sign a big name player at a small or worst performing club, you give them more responsibility because you've signed them as a marquee, which could be the case here. But Olam doesn't strike me as a type to, bust away a 40-point average in a Tigers team. So I think steer clear of Justin Olam.
He could have a good impact in real life, though, right? So
yeah, agree.
Not fantasy, but he brings a bit of starch and a bit of aggression. Tigers been lacking, so I'm actually excited for the Tigers to get him. I think he seems like a guy who loves his footy. So
absolutely,
life,
I think Olam is a great buy for the Tigers in real life. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he's the kind of hardy player they need. It just doesn't always translate to fantasy. So love Olam, don't love the fantasy situation.
Yeah, 100% agree. Spencer Leniu, he obviously moves as well. He goes from the best pack in the comp on attack, I would say, the Broncos last year, to the Chooks this year, who have been pretty light in the middle forward spot. A lot of people are talking about him at 395K and the fact that when he gets bigger minutes, he scores a bit better. I'm going to drop some stats on you. So 28 average last year, 36 average when he played 40-plus minutes. For mine, it's not that enticing. I just don't think he has that big work rate. He's the opposite of a Max King, right? For example, someone like that. He's not going to play 50-plus minutes at any point this season. Could he play 40, 45 potentially? Is it worth it for a 35 to 40 average? Not really for me.
No, I'm on the same boat. Like this screams mid-range to me. I know he's popular at almost 20% ownership, but the Roosters, they had injuries last year at full strength. They've got a pretty strong pack, especially in the edge, and they've got so many edges that they have to play their edges in the middle at times. Like I wouldn't be surprised if we see Angus and Satili Tupouniua play in the middle this year. So
Gus has to.
Yeah, so like they've got Wong and Nat Butcher, etc. on the edges. They've got Egan Butcher, like a lot of guys who can just play in the middle as well. So I don't think Leniu is going to get this minutes bump that people like. He's not going to get to 50, 60 minutes people might be expecting. And unless he's averaging 40 plus, like he's not worth it for me at 400K. So I'm going to be skipping him unless I see some crazy performance in the trials where he's playing big minutes.
He's not that type of player either. Like he's talked about for the Blues this year as well, and played a bit last year because he's that explosive impact guy off the bench. And there aren't that many of those guys, and it's fantastically useful in real life. It's not a good fantasy trait at all.
The other guy who's in a similar mold but a much better worker, who's not on this list, but he's at the Roosters at this price point, Taylor May. It's not Taylor, is it? It's what's his first name? Tyrell May. That's right. I was big on him at the start of last year. Like I had him on my bench for most of the season. He's a guy who really started shining at the back end of the last year and over the rep period, etc. He's a guy who I think is more likely to step into a 40-point average if he got the minutes. So he's a name to watch. He's not on our list, but keep an eye on him on preseason.
It's got to be preseason, 100%. We're going to see how they're going to work going to that. We've got a few other guys here. We're going to go into the 400s a little bit here because the cash cows are a bit light and there's some pretty exciting guys here. Brendan Piakura, this is a no-brainer, right? So the Broncos go into this year. He's a young talent. They really like him. He came in midway through last year. They lose Kurt Capewell. Pretty happy to do so, it seems to me. They seem to trust this guy. Now, a lot of the time, these young forwards, they come into the team, they're a bit half-baked. They're still learning the team structure. They can get a whole preseason. Same as what we said about Brendan Hands in the hooker video. I think he just comes in with another year of preparation and makes a bit of a leap this year. And obviously, consistency of minutes is going to get him into the 40s. Maybe he does a bit more than that, but my forecast is at about a 42 average with attacking upside carrying him there, maybe even floating into the mid-40s.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree with that analysis. I think he's just in a good team. He's shown attacking stat upside at 43% ownership. I'd be scared not to own him because he has a try or two in him. But do I think he's an extreme value at 400k? Not really, but everyone else does, and it's a bit of FOMO if you don't get on him. And I think he is value, so he's the one mid-ranger I'll kind of bank on. Longy, just to actually quickly interrupt, going back to the name I mentioned before, Terrell May. He's actually 490k.
Oh, wow.
But he's outside of the cash cow range. But I just want to actually, while we're talking about him, his last 4 scores of last year, 59, 54, 50, and 48, all across about 40 minutes. And he is also a guy like Liam Henry who averaged about 60 in the reserve. So we should talk about him in another video. But Terrell May, if you're looking at Spencer Leniu at 430, I'd spend up for Terrell May.
We could make a dedicated video on him if the preseason form justifies it, right? If he's playing off the bench in preseason, he's playing 20 minutes a game, then I don't really want to talk about it. But if he's getting the minutes in preseason, yeah, that's enticing. That could be a top-tier gun if he grows into that. If Warrior Hargrave sort of steps back a bit as well, we could see what happens there. Let's hit a few of these other guys. And look, Hands, we talk about him in the hooker video, so I'm going to be super fast. It's him or Lussick. One of them will get 80 minutes. Whatever one it is a buy. But we talked about him in hookers, so I'm not going to drag on about that. Paul Alamotti. Now, this is the opposite of what we were talking about with Olam going from a better team to a worse team. Alamotti goes from the Dogs to the Panthers. He's not at all guaranteed to start round 1. But when he does get a shot in that team, he is going to absolutely crush it. I would not be shocked at all if we saw an average between 40 and 45 points from him at center.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've seen over the years some of these players just go to the Panthers and Roosters, etc. in general, just improve. Like I think back to Paul Momirovski a few years ago, and like every person that's playing center for the Panthers, like when they bring up the kids over Origin or the last round of the year, they're scoring 45, 52. It's just such a high scoring spot. And Alamotti has so much talent. I'm not sure what happened because he came in to the dog side last year as like the next gen, like he's the next big thing, and then they let him go after a year. It's a bit strange to me because I actually thought he had a really couple of good moments to start the year playing alongside Josh Adokar. Like they had some good chemistry there. But it kind of fell off, and I think he'll be an absolute threat at the Panthers. And if I'm paying up, I know it's only 400k, but for me, that's paying up for a center. Like if I had to pay up for a center to start the year, it would be Alamotti, I think.
Yeah, man, he's got every tool in the shed to be a top tier fantasy center, like tackle buster, offload, and he's throwing that Penrith squad, and he's going to crush it if he gets that spot. Josh Schuster. He averages 29 last year. When he plays big minutes in the back row, he averages 47. That's it. It's 20 points of value. Probably upside in that too, right? So if he comes in and he's a bit more mature this year and a bit better than he was a couple of years ago, which he definitely could be, it might even be the case that he floats into the 50s in terms of his average. And really what that shows us is what he's playing with, right? So even with being a bit inconsistent, that kind of thing, he's just a guy who produces fantasy points when he plays in the back row. Because of the way he runs the ball and because of his willingness to offload and because of those potential attacking stats there too. The other thing you throw in here is you've got a good Manly side who they're coming to this year with Luke Brooks coming into that team as well. There might be a bit more shape and some more attacking opportunities for him as well. So I just think at 408k, it's another mid-ranger. I know you don't like it, but
he's different. So this is a mid-ranger with like potential like 20 points. Like he could be, dual position who averages 50. To be honest, I just don't know where it went wrong for him. Like he came on hot, like such a good start to his career, and he's just fizzed out. I'm hoping this is the year for him to, because I love watching him play. He's a big bopper who has all the skills in the world. Like, I love to see it click for him. But yeah, if he's starting on the edge for me, he's locked in.
And when he tucks it under too, he's unstoppable. Absolutely unstoppable. Like, massive unit. A couple other guys here to talk on. Tallis Duncan. He might get that starting edge spot. That's enough for me at South Sydney. Plenty of attacking stats on offer. Anything else to add for him?
No, I think even if he doesn't, I'm going to watch closely in the charity shift, because even if, say, Jacob Host or Michael Cheekham wins that spot, usually South's edges do play 80 minutes. So if Tallis Duncan gets a spot, that's great. I think you have to lock him into your team. But the thing is, even if Host gets it, I'd be watching to see the minute split in case they change it up this year, because, look, Duncan was excellent in the limited time he was on the field last year. They're clearly very high on him. He's like a budget Cam Murray at this stage, and who knows, one day he could get to those levels as well. But they're high on him, and they need to give him some time with the team. So 413K if he gets a spot, I'm pretty high on him.
Yep, he's juicy. Fatal Mariner, another one here as well, goes to the Dragons. There's a chance that he plays big minutes there potentially. They don't have heaps of depth in their team, so. Yeah, 426K. I mean, he's floated around that price for a few years, though, with off-field injury concerns and that kind of thing, too. So I'm not super keen on this one. Do you see yourself starting with him?
I think if he wins that edge spot, which I think he could, like the Dragons have brought him over with purpose. I think when he plays, like his form has dipped with injuries over the last couple of years, but I think, under Flanagan as the coach, I think, he could be pretty solid. And he's shown before when he's playing big minutes on an edge, he can be a 50-point player. And I think with the dual position and not much depth at the Dragons, if he's starting there round one, he's in my team.
So what I'm hearing is you're going to have a few Dragons players for round one.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think if I have Haas, Murray, and Yo as my mids, I'm going to have to make some concessions, whether that be a couple of Dogs players, a couple of Dragons players, Can't afford the premium Eels players.
Would you take the guns, Piakura or Fatal Mariner, if Fatal Mariner was guaranteed to play good minutes on the edge?
Fatal Mariner. I think he has like a strong work rate. He is a try scorer when he's playing on the edge, and playing next to Ben Hunt is not a bad thing. Like, I think the show and go will open up some space for Fatal Mariner. There'll be times that Ben Hunt doesn't pass it and he'll go himself. There'll be times he passes it. I think he'll score a few tries off a crash ball this year. So I'm pretty bullish on Fatal Mariner.
I like it, man. Words of wisdom. That is our review of the cash cows. So look, again, reminder, this is February cash cows. We're going to do an up-to-date list in a few weeks' time, just heading into the preseason. But yeah, check them out. There's probably a few nuggets there. There's some other guys we're going to confirm. Some of these guys will slide right out, and we'll see you on the next video.